the average veteran transitioning out of the military into the civilian workforce, they're coming out with bachelor's degrees. Some have master's degree. They've been in leadership roles for many years. They've led teams in some really hostile environments to where there's chaos. They're looking for a place to fit in.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill, and today we're diving into the world of leadership development, coaching, and the unique perspective that military veterans bring to the civilian workforce. My guest is Mark Farmer. He's a senior manager of HR at Graincraft. Mark's journey from the military service to corporate HR leadership offers valuable insights for leaders of all sectors. As an executive coach, I'm particularly excited about this conversation because it touches on several critical aspects of effective leadership: the power of structured leadership development programs, the transformative impact of coaching in the workplace, and the untapped potential of military veterans in civilian roles. One key takeaway that I hope you'll gain is the importance of intentionality in developing leaders. As Mark shares his experience creating Graincraft's leadership program, notice how he emphasizes need assessment, cross-functional collaboration, and measurable outcomes. As you listen, I encourage you to reflect on your own leadership journey. Are you investing in your development and that of your team? Are you leveraging coaching techniques to empower your staff? Remember, great leadership isn't just about authority. It's about inspiring others and driving real results. So let's dive into my conversation with Mark and explore how we can all become more effective, inspiring leaders. Joining me is Mark Farmer. Mark is the senior manager of HR at Graincraft. In that role, he serves as part of the organization's leadership team as a coach and consultant on all areas of human capital. In addition, Mark is a highly decorated 20-plus year retired U.S. Air Force veteran. He served in both Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. You'll see why I've invited Mark on the podcast, because he's passionate about leadership development and coaching and how it impacts the lives and the cultures around him. He loves giving back to the military, and that way he works with the community to help them guide, particularly those transitioning who are trying to find their next mission and purpose in the civilian world. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Good to be here.
You know, Mark, we have had opportunity to meet in person. We've had lunch together, and it was really it's enjoyable just to have one-on-one with someone who has the same kind of strong beliefs about, from a work setting, the importance of leadership development and coaching. And sure. It's there. Therefore, it's why I wanted to kind of have you on the podcast and to kind of set the stage. Mark, I introduce you as a retired U.S. Air Force veteran, and you've transitioned out of the military world into the civilian world. Many people might not be real clear on what is that transition like for most.
Yeah. Great question. Cause, you hear a lot of stories, Mike, in terms of that transition being very hard, for military veterans, regardless of the branch they're in. Doesn't matter if it's Air Force, Navy, Marines, and now the Space Force, of course. But I tell you, for me, there were some challenges. Looking back on it, I've been retired from the Air Force for 6 years now. It's gone by really fast. I mean, I think you and I have met several years ago at a conference, and then we've continued that relationship since then. But yeah, it's different for everybody. Number one. Number two, I will say that the military in general is doing a much better job on preparing, transitioning military individuals, to the civilian sector. And what I mean by that is, years and years ago, I mean, I look at even my dad when he was in the Army, there was no class that you went through to prepare you for the transition. I think that, now, no matter what base you go to, there's something called the Transition Assistance Program, otherwise known as TAP. They may have possibly changed the name since I've been out, but it was a 1-week course that was mandatory for you to go through. Normally, a transitioning military member will go at about 12 months out, and then they even recommend going a second time, probably about six to 4 months out. And what that class is designed to do is it's everything from, hey, here are your options when you get out. Here's, how to write a resume. I'll go into that a little bit more here in just a second. Resume, job hunting, getting your medical records in order, and even just the psychological side. Let's not forget that because, in the military, it's an identity. Your career in the military literally becomes your identity for that tenure that you're in. And so it's a lot of veterans struggle as they move from that military over to civilian sector, and they're trying to find their new identity. Right. And that's even, for employers, think about it from the employer side. That's why, I just, last month I was in Austin, Texas, at a LEAP HR conference speaking about leadership development coaching there as well. And the veteran stuff always gets brought up, and employers, they've had a tough job. How do we handle these veterans? How do we speak to them, and how do they communicate to us? And do we understand them? What drives them? What motivates them? And so there's some big question marks around that, even from the employer side.
Well, may I pick up on that? And that is, you've spoken publicly on this topic. As you know, the listeners to this podcast are leaders. These are oftentimes leaders in decision-making position, people choosing who they bring into the organization. Yeah. What are the kinds of things that you advise leaders in the civilian world to be aware of for those folks who are coming out of the military into the workforce? What are those folks who are coming in? What are they needing from us as employers, and what do they need from us as leaders?
Sure. I think culture is a big deal. I go back to every branch has their core values. Normally there are about 3 core values. And, like the Air Force was integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. So as a military member's come across, I think they're going to look for that same flavor. Is the culture strong? Does the company stand for something? Where can I fit in? Because the average veteran transitioning out of the military into the civilian workforce, I mean, now they're coming out with bachelor's degrees. Some have master's degree. They've been in leadership roles for many years. They've led teams in some really hostile environments to where there's chaos, and ops tempo, right? And so they're looking for a place to fit in. And I think that's one of the big, can they relate to the organization? Can they find their new purpose and their new identity? Look at me, I come from a military career, where I focused in 2 areas. One was highly classified space operations, right? Satellites in space and some crazy stuff. Very technical. I was also a leadership development instructor in Germany for years. And if you would have asked me, hey, would you be, 6 years ago when I transitioned, would you be working for a food manufacturing company? He's like, what? Food manufacturing, right? But it was a good fit because I dealt with people a lot. My passion was people. And so that fit into HR at Braincraft was almost kind of a natural feeling in transition.
I know you have a passion for leadership development and coaching. You and I share that passion. I think we also share some other similar core values. I think we've talked about that over lunch. But as you have been with Graincraft and you're providing HR leadership with the emphasis that you actually do, what is it about leadership development? What is it about coaching that just kind of speaks to you, and why it's so important, not just to you, but why is it so important for leaders to be mindful of, don't overlook this?
Yeah, I think, leadership development as a whole, we throw those words around, right? And again, the Air Force sent me to Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama for a while, just to learn how to facilitate leadership development. And I think what I love about it is it's same with the coaching, right? I compare it to landscaping. Let's talk about landscaping for a second. So, you're working on your landscaping beds at your house and it doesn't look good. Curb appeal's not good, but then you spend days and days, maybe a whole weekend, new mulch, put some nice plants in it, edge it really well. And you kind of can sit back and go, wow, look at that. Mm. And, being able to help someone get unstuck or move across into different areas for their career or just anything going on in their life. I think that's what I love, sitting back and kind of just looking at the growth someone can make. And same for the leadership development side. In the Air Force, the average age of someone coming into the military, a recruit, is 18 to 23, somewhere around there. We're talking young, right? And there's a lot of responsibility. And as they move up in rank into the non-commissioned officer realm, or even if it's an officer coming straight in from the academy or ROTC, they are required to go through a leadership development course. It's somewhere around 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the branch. And you cannot be assigned a direct report and become a manager of others until you've gone through this course. And so the military does a really good job of prepping their members. And I think, moving over to Graincraft, we kind of took that same mindset as well. So,
Mark, I think I've shared with you, I think regular listeners know, my business, Bench Builders, we offer leadership development. And the reason why is our clients, they want to instill these leadership understandings, but they don't do a really good job with that. They promote someone because they're really good, but they never really spend the time to help them become effective supervisors and beyond. Walk us through a little bit about your experience when you joined Graincraft and the process that Graincraft kind of went through to develop its leaders.
Yeah, sure. When I arrived, again, been there 6 years, Graincraft didn't have a formal leadership development program, right? Something that was missing, I identified with it pretty early on, since I just, came from the military in that realm. And I think that, we had our learning management system and everything, some courses you could take, but no actual formal program. And I think that's, one of the things that, Karen, who I report to, which, director of HR, which is great. And her and I talked, and she's like, hey, what do you think about making that one of your goals for the year? Great. And her and I teamed up together. We did use a third-party consultant for some stuff, but I was able to pull from all of my leadership development stuff from the Air Force, and same for her previous companies that she had been a part of. And we started developing that. And, one of the things that I was taught early on, I'm certified in instructional systems design as well. And so ISD, one of the first things you're going to do is a needs assessment, right? And so I knew my plant managers out in the field, because, we have plants stretching from Rome, Georgia, East Coast, all the way to Los Angeles, California, West Coast. Mm-hmm. And I think, I solicited them and said, hey, need feedback. What are you and your leadership team and all your managers, frontline supervisors struggling with? What's the need, basically? And we got the juices flowing and some brainstorming, and really started noticing trends around communication, accountability, leadership styles, coaching versus counseling, all these different things. How do you performance manage someone, right? Having those critical conversations. I mean, it's tough, right? And so we took that feedback and developed the outline. And I was able to use my instructional systems design experience to develop that outline. And then that's when we started creating the content. And so, I think it turned out really well. 4 main modules, about 13 sub modules and, of content. And so far we've had about 94 individuals go through it. And, we're not done, still in progress, but, we are getting some great feedback from the field. Managers are feeling more confident. And it's obviously, we're looking for certain things on the ROI side. Turnover rates. Are they moving? Are they getting better? The turnover and retention, and just feedback from our culture engagement pulse surveys as well.
For those who are listening and not watching this episode, I'm nodding up and down to so many different things. Let me just point out a couple of things you just said that is just so key. One, rather than HR just go out and say, we've got training for you, y'all started by going to the inside customer, the managers, and say, what are the needs? And you explored what might be potential solutions to those needs. Another thing I liked about what you just described is on the front end. You said, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's do it in a way that is engaging for the participants, that they not only learn new skills, but they use those skills, and that those new skills should have an impact that can be measured. You mentioned lower turnover. Do you find that desire to do something like lowering turnover, is that what makes doing management training work, in your opinion?
It's a part of it, right? There's the tangible ROI and there's the intangible ROIs on it. I think, and in all honesty, a leadership development program, it can be hard to quantify the ROI on it. But, I was even looking at our numbers over the past 3 years, and our turnover rates have gone down each year. Now, could you contribute it all to leadership development? No. However, I think it plays a part in it. I think it's significant. And just the feedback that we're getting from the field is really good. And I think that, if you've heard of the Peter principle before, right? It's like you have individuals that are technically really, really good at their job, and we need them to be, but we thrust them into supervisor and management positions because we're like, well, hey, they're really good technically, so they got to be a good people manager, right? And you and I both know, Mike, that's far from the truth, right? And it takes it's like it's a muscle that you got to get the reps in, right? And when I did a poll of how many people that are currently in a management position have had the formal training, the numbers are really low. That's where Karen and I really tackled that together and developed the program. And, there was just a little statistic here, big study done by the Workforce Institute at UKG. And they did a study. The question they asked was, compared to your doctor, your physician, your therapist, and even your spouse, what kind of impact does your manager have on your health, both mental and physical? And it was 69% was the manager. Manager had the greatest impact on someone's health. And so when I think about that number, it's pretty staggering just to sit there and think about it. And it's like, there's definitely a need, right? And I think that's where that passion comes from, to help develop, to help the organization. So.
Mark, you mentioned that when management training is being considered, there's a thought up front. What's the ROI? And you can establish those metrics, but there's some intangibles. You made reference to that. At least one of the things I have found that if you do training in a way that you bring people together on a consistent basis, it creates a sense of camaraderie. That sense of camaraderie might mean that there are people coming together that might not interact in their normal daily roles. And I know what y'all are trying to do in terms of building a strong culture within, Graincraft. I have found, I don't hope this has been your experience, but I have found that supervisor and management training done right can be a powerful reinforcer of the culture that you're trying to build.
Yes.
Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, spot on, Mike. I'm actually glad you brought that up. When we were figuring out the number one, the audiences, right? Karen and I started with the plant managers. We didn't want to assume they've been through formal leadership training. And so we started with them because we wanted them to be the champions of the program. They needed to see it. They needed to go through it themselves. Then that second audience was down into who is currently a manager of others, right? And then our third audience was the high potentials. So I think that when we looked at the audience, once I got all the names, I started mixing them up from different, you would assume a plant manager in Birmingham would always be talking to a manager at McPherson, Kansas. Not the case, right? They may not interact very much. So I'm glad you called that out because we mixed the audience members so they could get that time with each other that they normally don't get. Now, granted, we kicked this off right after COVID, or actually right during COVID. So everything was Zoom, and we're still doing Zoom because our plans are stretched so far apart. And it's really nice. We do half day training sessions. We use the Zoom breakouts. And so we're able to mix and match them from different plants in different geographical areas into those breakout rooms. They spend a lot of time together. And some of the feedback when we do the end of course or end of module surveys was exactly what you just said. The camaraderie and just being able to talk to people that they don't normally interact with was really high on their list.
Mark, we've spoken quite a bit about the value of leadership development. We have not spent much time on coaching. And in the few minutes we have left, I want to make sure, though, that we've had a chance to kind of get your take on coaching and why you've concluded that it's as powerful as it is. Why do you think that way?
Yeah, I think, when you're looking at the average organization, and we use the term, everybody uses the term counseling a lot in terms of performance management. But there's a huge difference. There's even a huge difference between coaching and consulting, right? The training that I've been through, and I've got, there's two other team members on the Graincraft team that's been through this training through IPEC and the ICF coaching, federation. That's, ICF defines coaching as that partnering in a very deep and thought provoking and creative process that, and it used the word inspires, right? Because we're talking leadership, inspires people to maximize their potential. But coaching is a little different. And we actually put that into our leadership development program, because, on average, a manager, they may look at it like, okay, it's easier if I just say, hey, you messed up on this. Don't do it again. Now get out of here. Right. And I'm being a little harsh on that, but that's that counseling. It's that more one way, conversation versus coaching, really getting them to think and pull those answers that they truly already have inside them. Right. And you're guiding them through that journey. And it's an exploration. There's a lot of empowering questions that are asked. And it's just different. You're helping them come up with the conclusion and you're there to support them through it. It's very thought provoking. Definitely different than therapy. But it's something that I wanted to make sure that our management and our leaders was actually trained on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mark, I'm glad you made that distinction. Folks know me because of my HR background and my consulting role. They also know that I coach, but oftentimes they don't realize that those are distinct roles. When I'm working with a client in a consultant capacity, they're bringing me in because they're looking for answers. And so I can come in and help them in that capacity. But in my work as a coach, particularly my one-on-one work, I'm more focused on the questions that I can ask that results in insights on the client's part. Help me with some insights that you might have gained. Can you think of a situation where either you or part of the organization you're supporting or some other setting where someone or a group got stuck? What did it take to get unstuck?
Yeah, I think, I mean, just right off the top of my head, helping an individual, he was really struggling with his current place of employment. He was struggling with the job that he was in, and this is outside grain crap, but this one really comes to mind because I think that he wanted to move, but he didn't know how to move. Didn't know how to take that next step. And really, if you think about coaching, and I love the unstuck part of, the podcast. It's because he truly was stuck. And he needs someone to come alongside and partner with him. And a lot of times in the IPEC world, we call them gremlins, right? And there's an acronym and everything, but that gremlin message that you're telling yourself. And in this case, when you peel that onion back in a true coaching session, for this individual, it came down to fear. Fear of the unknown. Hey, it didn't work out last time, so it's probably not going to work out this time. There's an assumption, right? And so, some of those questions as you're going through, I remember one specific question that just hit really hard was, what is it currently costing you not to apply for a new job, not to get your resume ready, not to get your LinkedIn profile up to date, not to start? What is that costing you to stay where you're at?
Great question.
It's a powerful question, right? And then you're just listening to that feedback and it hit him really hard. It was like an aha moment, like, oh my goodness, I never thought about it that way. What it's truly costing me to stay. Is this serving me well right now? And fast forward, many months of coaching, and he's left that place of employment, got picked up at a new job. He's super happy, super stoked about it. And life's really good for him. And so those are the type of moments, I think you asked me earlier about, what makes that so passionate for you? Looking at that now to where he started to where he's at, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
I love it. Mark, we've had a pretty far-ranging conversation. We've talked about your military background and what it prepared you for in the civilian world. We've talked about that transition, not only yours, but the transition that others experience, and what leaders in organizations need to be mindful of as they are trying to attract military veterans. We've talked about the power of leadership development and the intentionality. Don't just throw training at it, but be very purposeful. You've shared a bit about how you've seen coaching, because you've been coached and because you are a coach, has been so powerful in your life and in the lives you've had the opportunity to work with. As you reflect on, what do you want our listeners to have as takeaways?
Well, maybe a couple things. I think that definitely, there's some stigma out there about military veterans. I would just say, give them a shot. Not every military veteran is exactly the same, but I will say some of those competencies that you may be looking for as an employer could definitely be pulled from a military veteran that's transitioned. And so, get out there, Google some military career fairs, see if there's anything close to the base. A lot of the military bases, if you're close to one, hosts those. Some great organizations that do all that. And, from a leadership development coaching perspective, even when I was out in Austin speaking last month, I asked a question. Raise your hand if your organization currently has a formal leadership development program. And there weren't a ton of hands. There were some, but not a ton. And so there's an opportunity there, right? And anytime we can develop our leaders, that feeds into the culture of the organization, right? And then just really, I think there's a shift. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time to counsel. If it's an immediate need and there's like safety or something really pressing, it's very time critical. I get it. But, I think there's an opportunity for organizations to sneak in some of that coaching, flavor into those leadership development programs. And I think only positive things can come from that.
That was a great recap. I want to throw out to you is before we kind of wrap up,
Sure.
I've got a question for the leaders who are in this audience. And that question is, why do people choose to follow your lead? Is it out of obligation, or do they truly believe in your vision? I have found that leadership thrives on clarity and confidence. It's not just about holding authority. It's about creating practical solutions that drive real bottom line results. I'm an executive coach, and I help leaders achieve bottom line impact and become inspiring people that people want to follow, not because they have to. My company is Bench Builders. We provide personalized strategies drawing from Fortune 500 insights to drive significant progress towards your goals. So I invite you to lead in a way that draws people to your vision. You want to learn more? Visit bench-builders.com. Learn how perhaps we can support your leadership journey. Mark, your insights have been really invaluable. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike.
If folks want to reach out to engage with you further or have questions, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just do a search for Mark Farmer, and, of course, mfarmer@graincraft.com. Shoot me an email. I'd love to chat with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. And I also want to give a big thank out to the subscribers for tuning in. And I hope today's discussion provides you some insights that Mark has provided that will help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.